Hi everyone. So I am Emma for anyone that hasn't met me before, and I'm here today to talk to you about communicating your value. And so over the course of this next half hour or so, I'm going to be telling you about how you can get a bit more clarity on the value that you bring. I'm going to be talking a bit about how you can translate into that into what it means for others. What's the value that others get from what you bring? And how you can feel more sure of yourself in communicating that. So that's what this is all about. The motivation for doing this, the reason that kind of kicked me off is that I guess over the last few months, I've had a few conversations with different clients and different people that I've been talking to who've just talked about how they struggle to tell people about what they're doing. Quite often they might be in a kind of technical role and struggling to communicate with other people within the company and helping them to understand, well, what is it? What's the value I'm bringing? What's the thing that I'm doing? And how do I get them to understand and listen to that? But it's not just that. It's also about how do we get ideas? How do we kind of translate and help other people understand those ideas so that we get the recognition that we deserve with the value that we're bringing? And how do we do that when we're part of a team? It's not always clear what we bring, and so how do we separate that out as well? So the final thing that also often comes through when I'm working with people is, how do I do this authentically? How do I avoid being the salesperson? How do I do it in a way that I put my value across, and so that it's not icky, it feels okay and it feels comfortable to us. So those are the kind of the things that have triggered me to do this. And I've gone through a bit of a journey myself, kind of going from being and starting my own business and having to put myself out there and having to be out there selling myself, but in a way that feels authentic and right to me. Because selling yourself can feel pretty funny sometimes, but it's about, and I've learned quite a lot about how do I put myself out there and help people see the value that I bring without being a pushy salesperson. So that's kind of what I want to cover today. If you've got any comments or questions, then please do add them as we go along. I'm running this on StreamYard, so if you haven't given StreamYard permission to see you there's a link in the box above that will help you to do that if you want to. Now, all that does is it means that when you add a comment, I can see who's commenting, and if I choose to add your comment and I flash up a question so that we answer it, then your name will come up rather than the kind of Facebook user that will come up alternatively. But there's no requirement to give StreamYard permission. It's just that it allows me to see who's there and who's talking to me. The other thing that you might want to do is have a pen and paper, because I'm going to kind of, hopefully what I'm going to talk about is going to give you a few nudges and a few ideas. But the other thing that I will also do is just give you a kind of nudge every so often to note some stuff down and say, well, you might want to note this down to come back to this, or you might want to see what comes out here. So hopefully you'll go away with some kind of concrete stuff as a result of this. So pen and paper or your phone and just kind of taking some notes could be quite useful. So where do I want to start? So communicating your value, I think making sure that you value yourself first. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that you can't communicate the value that you bring to anyone else authentically until you see the value that you bring, until you understand and you know what that is. So this is the important thing about doing it authentically, being there, understanding what you bring, and really believing in that. And if you go back into, because I've mentioned sales already, if you think about salespeople, you can tell when they're selling something that they believe in, and you can tell when they're just trying to get you to buy something and they just want the money. And this is where it comes down to. It's about understanding the value that you bring inside you, and how do you communicate that through. So we're going to spend a little bit of time to start just thinking about how you might draw out that value and get hold of that. The other thing that I want to say, though, before I move on, is that we talk a lot, I'm saying value yourself, and we talk about communicating your value, but actually often the value that you get, we get caught up in that being about us and our identity and who we are. And I find it a lot easier to try and separate this out. This isn't about you putting a value on you and your identity. This is about putting a value on your skills and your capabilities. And there's a shift there. So if you try and put a value on you as your identity, then what that does is it puts a pressure on you. It's like someone's judging you and who you are and what you're doing and everything about you. It gives us and the really lovely thing that someone said to me that I come back to every time I get caught in this trap is that you as a person, your value is infinite. You have so much that you can give and so much that you can do as an individual and as a person that there's no way you can put a value on that. There's so many things you can develop and that you can learn and you can grow, and just the spirit that you are that's infinite in value. So we're not putting, and you're not, when you're going out there and communicating your value, you're not communicating the value that you bring, you're communicating the value that your skills can bring, your skills, your capability, and how you show up and what you know. But those skills, you are much more than those things as a whole. So the thing that does is that takes us away from judging and being judged about ourselves, and starts to encourage us to look at, well, what do I know? What do I deliver? What can I learn? What is it that I can invest in? Because this stuff can grow and change and it can evolve. So that's really the first thing that I'd encourage you to have a think about. And this is something we do in my mentorship program quite early on, is just think about the skills and the capabilities that you have. So you might want to start noting this down, and just kind of what we do in my program is we create a mind map from this, but it's just thinking through, well, what skills do you have that you build on? What skills do you have where you can go out and use them, and not just in your workplace. This is not kind of, there are skills and capabilities that you have elsewhere in your life that can contribute, that can add value in your work that you may not realize that you have. Now let me just kind of start here. So you might start with work. So let's start with work and think about, what is it that you're doing in your day job, and start thinking about the skills and the capabilities that you use on a daily basis. And that might be technical, it might be going into the people skills, it might be it might be selling, there might be all sorts of different skills that you have there. But then think about other jobs that you've done. Think about what you've done, what you've built up as you've moved through those jobs, or at university, or at school even, things that you've done that have helped you to develop and grow. Those are all relevant too. Those are all things that you can do. And very often we dismiss them because we've moved on and we've kind of developed ourselves, and we think that they're just something that we do. We don't value them. But actually, it's in us valuing them and seeing that gives us a little bit of an edge over someone that doesn't have them, or even just it's something that we do without thinking about it. When we start noticing that we're doing it, it adds to our feeling of value. It adds to that value in yourself. So then we go outside of work. So within your home, what is it that you do there? When so often we devalue as mums and as mothers, these skills can get devalued, but there's so much kind of in being a mum or being a dad and having kids that is really valuable in coordinating, organizing, influencing. God, the amount of influence you need to have to get kids to do some things, much more than what you might need to do at work. So just encouraging you to think about some of those skills as well can really draw out some of the additional capabilities that you have. And then things like volunteering, hobbies that you have, all of these things kind of come together to give you an indication of what you can do and the value that you can bring. So I just encourage you to note this down as you go along, and have a think about those. Now, moving on from this, what else could we think about to encourage you to think about the value that you bring? And that's to think about what others say about you. What is it that other people would say about the value that you bring along? I'm just going to quickly check in the comments. And sorry, I'm just going to go back one, because Tony has asked a really good question, which I meant to say in that last bit, is how do we do it without comparing ourselves to others? And how do we value each other, and how do we understand our value without comparing ourselves to others? Well, we're human. It's a natural thing to compare ourselves to others. It's a natural thing to kind of try and judge how we're getting on against other people, but we don't have to. And I can't tell you how not to, except to notice that we don't have to. And I think that's a really valuable thing to see, is that while we do it automatically, we can't compare ourselves to others. The way that I do something, it can be very different to you. The way that the comparison can come in, and I'm going to come back to this in a little while, is how in a business they might compare your value and try and put value on those skills, and how that gives to the business. But we're going to come back to that in a minute, because I think it's important to distinguish that between how you're being judged from what is it that you bring. So hopefully, Tony, nudge me if I don't come back to that, because I think it's important. So, and for anyone that's joining us, I'll just reinforce that if you have any questions or any comments as we go along, please do add them, because I think that and I'll come back to them, and I'll address them as I go along, or I'll come back to them at the end and try and kind of answer as many questions as I possibly can. So please do add them in the comments, and I'll definitely have a go. So, okay, so what do others say about you? The next thing, and this is a great way if you're struggling to come up with your own list of the skills that you bring, the capabilities that you bring, then noticing and asking other people can be a really good way of getting some input to start with. Now, I know it can feel scary at first, so I'd start with some people that are friendly towards you. Maybe it's your partner, maybe it's your close friends, maybe there's some colleagues that you get on with at work, or maybe it's even your boss. But just asking them, what do they think are your strengths? What do they think is that you bring? What's the value that you bring to the work that you do? Asking them, and maybe the other thing that's quite important in this is if you can get them to tell you and give you examples of what they've actually seen you do. So what is it that what do they think are your strengths, and what do they think you're good at? What value do you bring? But give me an example of that. That helps you really understand it and see how it's demonstrated and see how it can add value to others. So going out there and asking some people. I did this. I probably first did this about 10 plus years ago, and it took me quite a lot of effort to get over that thing of getting out there and asking. But what came back was absolutely amazing, and it gave me real insight. It helped me see some of the things that I was doing that I wasn't recognizing in myself, the things that I saw, the things that I dismissed, they saw as real skills, because I just thought that was normal. I thought that everyone did that. So asking that question. And what I'd also say is that when people then give you that feedback, when they give you, this is compliments that are being given here, think about how you might receive that compliment. So the best thing that you can do is just say thank you. That feedback is a gift from them. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to say to them and dismiss it, or tell them or give them a reason why you did it a particular way. Or the whole point of this exercise is for you to get some feedback and for you to listen and absorb it, and then say thank you. And that's the gift that they're giving you. Now, later down the line, you might give them something in return, and you might give them some feedback in return, or whatever it is, but you don't feel like you need to reply with a compliment, reply with some feedback, and reply with anything. You are specifically getting out there to ask them that question and to get some feedback for you, and then receive it and open yourself up to it and see what comes through. Now, another place that you can sorry, I'm just going to take a drink. So another place where you can get feedback and get some insight on what others would say about you is by looking at things like your performance assessment, the feedback that your manager might have given you, feedback that other people have given you at work, comments that they've given that have been nice and have have given you some insight into what you've done and your strengths. Now, most of us have these, but we don't always notice them. We often, and especially when performance management comes through, we tend to look at the criticisms or the things that we can do better. Now, what I'd love to encourage you to do is to go, if you've got these documents, to go through them and just pull out the good things, pull out the things that they're saying that are positive, and just pull them out and capture them somewhere. You might want to take a picture, and one of the things that I find really useful here as a nice little boost is to take a photo or a screenshot of various different things that people have said that are kind of feedback that they've given you that's nice, and just put it in a folder somewhere. And that's a really good thing to just sometimes go and have a look at and go and have a notice and just kind of scan through and give you a little boost. So definitely encourage you to do that if you fancy it. Something I've got now, certainly from when I've been doing my coaching. It's a really lovely thing to scroll through and see the difference that I've made. And that just gives you that little kind of boost, which encourages you to value the skills that you bring and what you say yourself. So now, once you've got that, and this is where I'd like to just encourage you again, if you've got that pen and paper, just maybe scribble down and think about, well, okay, who are the people that you might approach? Who are the people that might say that you could start with just to get a bit of feedback about you and what you've done? And who might you just, where might you find some extra evidence of the things and the value that you bring that you might not be noticing? Who could help you with this? So I'll give you a minute to just scribble that down and to think about that. And so what we've done here is started off by thinking about, well, what is your value? What do you bring? What are your skills? What are your capabilities? The thing that we now need to think about is the communication of that value. So how is this translated into the value you bring at work? How can you tell people and get them to understand? And this is where we now start to shift into, well, what does the business want from you? So you're working in a company or an organization, and they are employing you for something. Now, within that, the reason that they are paying you money must be that they've got a business case somewhere. They can see that they need a person or they need the skills that you bring, and so they're willing to pay for that. So there's a business case somewhere within all of that that gives you a clue as to the value that the business is expecting from you. And so by looking at your role, your responsibility, and sort of looking at how that's been defined, taking it away from you, and this is taking it away from the personal. This is no longer about you. This is about what the business is looking for. Having a think about that and understanding, well, how does then what you bring translate into what they're looking for, and what's the language that they're using in order to do that? And this is the translation piece. So starting to understand the language that the business uses means that you're better then at communicating that out, because you would use that language. And the reason for doing this is that very often people are busy. They don't have the time to go through and get into the detail and understand how what you're saying applies in their world. So the more that you can communicate in their language and in their world, the more likely they are to listen to you. So the more that you can talk about the value that they bring in their language, the more likely they are to recognize it from you. So going through and just understanding, well, what's their expectation of you? How does that kind of fit into your role, your objectives, and various other things? What's the language they use? That can be a great place to start. The other way to look at it is to look at, how does your organization add value? So what is it that they sell? Where does the profit come from? Where is it that the value is added by whoever you work for? And how does that then translate down into the job that you do? Now, this isn't always obvious. It can take a little bit of digging around, but just giving a bit of an example, I'll give you two examples. One is my first role as a software developer. I worked for an R&D company. So the way the company made money was that they sold research and development. They had contract research and development. Customers would pay for a contract for us to do some research for them. And then also they would take from the research and the stuff that was done, package that up into a product and sell the product. So there were sort of two ways to make money. Now, it's the thing that I was doing, sometimes it wasn't funded by a customer and it wasn't obvious how it went into a product. So it wasn't clear how I was adding value to the company. But what was also great about the stuff that I did, and the place that I was working in, was that it was nice and visual. It was image processing. So it was stuff that the marketing department loved to have. It was stuff that people often put us in front of customers and to explain the sort of things that we could do. So by working on sort of these newer ideas, what it gave is the opportunity for the business to demonstrate what the potential was and to open up conversations with customers who would then come in later down the line and invest and get some research and development done. So it's not always like you can see directly, and that's probably more direct than the next one that I'm going to give, but it's not always that you can see exactly how it translates through. And of course, my role within that I was one of a team. So understanding this all got wrapped up and taken through and turned into kind of a product or a thing that we'd done as a team. But I was part of that. And that was absolutely okay to say I contributed to that. I didn't have to pull out the exact things that I did. It's set for within the team and when I was talking to my boss. But it's kind of distinguishing and realizing that it's okay to kind of be part of a team and contribute to something and say that you did it. That's absolutely fine, so long as then at the later down the line, when you get to the okay, so what's your actual role, you can start to unpick that and see that yes, I did contribute this bit to it. I did work my way through this. So that's the first thing. The other example that I wanted to give was at a university. So this is a bit more weird. So in a university, where does the value come from? Well, it's with the students and it's with research. And I was doing work to help the university do more with industry. So I thought that my role was to build business and get more industry investment and to spin out companies and various other things. I thought that's where my value would come from to start with. But it was only after a little while that I realized that my value actually came more from helping the academics to win research by connecting them up with companies and showing that their research had value, but also by helping them to helping to raise the profile of the university so that more students wanted to come and study there because it was relevant. Now that kind of, again, it's moving more into the marketing and the profile raising aspect of things. And as a manager and as the kind of facilitator, I was never the person doing the research or kind of making that stuff happen. But I knew that my role within that if I hadn't got involved, things wouldn't have happened. Some of the connections wouldn't have been made as easily. And so I'm comfortable in saying that I helped spin out 4 companies within that university. Okay, lots of other people helped within that too. But I know that I added value in how I worked with people. And the value I added was in the building the relationships and making that communication and then helping that to turn back round into the relationships later on down the line. So I don't know if this is making any sense. If you've got any questions here, then please do ask, because I know that it can be difficult to follow that strand through, but it's so invaluable to start to understand what's the business need from you and distinguishing that from and sort of separating that from, well, what's the value I add and what's the need for what's the business wanting from you in order to make money. In order to add value itself. And those two things, the value that you bring, it doesn't always necessarily line up exactly, but you will be adding some value there to the business, and understanding what those are means that's where you can focus. Now what I'm just going to move on to now is just thinking about, well, okay, so this can be quite knackering if you try and do this for everyone. So it's useful to then think about, well, who are the people that you want to know about what you do? Who are the people that are in the important stakeholders within this, that would be useful to you to know the value that you add? So this might be the team that you're in, but it might not be the whole team that you exist in. It might just be one or two members of the team to start with. It might be your boss, and your boss is probably someone that you want to know that you add value. It might be that there are other managers or other people, other colleagues within the organization that it would be useful for you if they knew what you can do. They might be the ones that can add and offer you additional opportunities. They might be the ones that can bring you out and encourage you to work on different projects, or who might go out and champion your skills for themselves. So that's something that's worth thinking about, because once you then start thinking about, well, who are they, then you can get more specific about, well, what's the language that they speak, what is the thing that they're looking for, and what's the value that they need in their role to do their job, and how can you help them do that. So instead of trying to get very caught up in the big picture of the whole company or the whole organization, you can narrow down and just start to think about, well, okay, if I want to communicate the value that I bring to this particular team member, I need to go and figure out what their job is and what they do and how what value they really what they're looking for from someone, and start to help, and then start to translate what you can do into their language. And of course, then the question is, well, okay, so what do you do? And I guess there's just a little bit of encouragement again for me now, just thinking about, with your pen and paper, just again, take a bit of notes. Who would you like to know? Who are the influences in the organization that you would like to know what you do? Or who are the people around you that you'd like to start with, that they just, if they knew a bit more about what you do, that would help you a bit more. And then the next thing to think about is then, how can you help them notice? So what we're talking about here is, I think we often get the idea that we need to do a big kind of, wow, this is me, I do all these amazing things, and that's it. And that's the big sell. But that's not what it's about when you're trying to communicate your value. The thing that works best is for you to show up regularly and remind them and nudge them and help them notice that you exist and this is what you bring. So this is, again, getting away from the kind of the big pitch, the big sell, the big, I did these amazing things, and just giving them little tiny nudges along the way, and kind of saying, oh, do you know what? I did this today. Do you know what? I did that today. And so often the things that come up here are things like, in team meetings, there's often a chance to kind of say, actually, I did this. And the first time you say it, people might kind of not understand. They might go, well, you might get a sea of blank faces. But the next time you do it, it'll be building on what you did last time. And the next time you do it, they'll have got to know you a little bit better. And hopefully you'll also have started to see who responds and who doesn't. And you've started to understand their language. So that the more you can kind of help them to notice what it is that you're doing over a period of time, the more likely they are to start to kind of that kind of builds up and adds a sense of what this person really is adding value. And they're not just doing it once, they're doing it repeatedly doing it. And now I have a better understanding of what they can do and how they do it, because I've seen them do this and I've seen them do that, and I've just noticed them over the period of time. Now, that might also be, so there's the kind of nudging and kind of in meetings, taking the chance just to speak up a little bit and just explain what you've been doing, and explaining it, as I said, over a period of time, they will start to understand it more, hopefully. And maybe you can also ask them, do you understand? Is there anything I could explain more? So that you get a feeling for, well, what is the language that you need to use? The other thing that you might want to do is speak up and volunteer to do a few things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone, that give you the chance to work with someone so that they can see the skills that you bring in a slightly different way. So it might be that you've got skills outside of the workplace that people haven't noticed yet. And so being able to sort of speak up and say, do you know, I could do that. I could help with that, and get involved in that. It's amazing how that can spread the word about you and what you can do. Now, just a very quick example. I used to be a sports and social club, the social secretary for our sports and social club at our organisation. And I organised all sorts of different events. Now, I did it because I like organising stuff and getting people together. But I know that as a result of doing that, people saw my organisational skills in a completely different way. And people across the organisation saw those skills and started to see me in a different way, which really helped me. People then talk about me and mention me to my boss, and it added value in that way. So there's little things that you can do, that you can get involved outside of your core role, that can help you to help people to see the value that you bring. And the thing that also can benefit is going back to what I was saying at the beginning about asking others. If you can find a mentor or a supporter within the organization who will champion you, so starting to get out there and asking others and talking to others about what value do I bring, but also just helping them to see how great you are, so that they championing you, so that they're kind of talking about you. So that gives you that extra boost, but it also means that people are hearing it from different directions. So that can be really beneficial too. Now, I'm just conscious that going back to Tony's question about, so how do we do this stuff without comparing ourselves to others? So there is, within a business, there's always going to be a comparison against other people, because that's part of what happens. I said it's part of being human. So the business will be comparing you. The business will be looking at, and especially when it comes down to pay rises and recognition and promotion, there's a comparison that is going on, and that is a kind of natural thing that happens. And so we start to compare ourselves. And I guess the thing to notice is how valuable that comparison is. How valuable is it to you to understand how you compare to someone else? It might be that, yes, it's valuable because it gives you an insight into, well, where do I need to do that extra investment in skills? What are the extra skills or capabilities that I need in order to boost myself and to put myself above them? But to improve my chances of the pay rise or the promotion or whatever it is, how can we do that? Might give us insight in order to do that. But if that comparison is pushing you down, and you're thinking that, well, as a result of kind of looking at this other person, I don't think I'm valuable enough anymore, I don't think I'm worth it, then remember that we're not comparing you and as a person, as an identity, we're comparing your skills. And where you can always go out and improve your skills, you can always go out and hone your skills. And so I think that's what I just sort of say, is that comparison is about the skills and the capabilities you have, not about you. And when you do that, it gives you if you do it well, it can give you some boost for how to develop. If you do it badly, it can be really demotivating. So if it's demotivating you, it's not being done in the right way, I guess, is what I would say. So, and just come back, so the final thing that I wanted to cover, and I said that I would cover in this, is the how much is too much question. So, okay, we're putting ourselves out there, we're telling people about the value that we bring. But we don't want to be one of those icky people that kind of just pushes themselves all the time. We don't want to be one of those people that always talks about themselves. And so how do we know when we're getting to that point? How do we know when it's too much? Well, the fact that you notice that someone else is doing it too much probably means that you won't ever get to that point, for a starting point, because quite often it's kind of be tuning in and noticing people's reactions. But actually, and probably what you'll find is that too much for you at the moment is not enough against what other people are doing. So pushing yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone and doing a little bit more than you're doing, and then noticing the reactions of people, and then pushing us and getting comfortable with that, noticing how people react to it, noticing that it's not as bad as it feels, but do a little step to start with, and then a little bit more. And what you'll find is that you build, and you'll notice if people are kind of going, oh my God, this is too much, you will pick up from them and their reactions that this just wasn't right. And the thing to remember here is that it doesn't matter if you get it wrong a couple of times. The people that we tend to think about, oh God, they're just so over the top with this, they're doing it consistently, and they keep on doing it over and over again. So that's kind of the thing that we don't want to be the person that does it over and over again, but if we do it a bit and then we take a check and sort of notice, well, what is it that other people are doing? How are people reacting to that? Then it doesn't matter if you get it wrong a couple of times, I guess is what I'm saying. So if you get it wrong, that's fine. It's just making sure you notice and check in with, well, am I doing too much? And then stepping away if you are. So I don't know if that helps again. So please ask questions. I think that's really about most of what I wanted to say. So if you do have any questions, then please do add them in the comments. I'll come in and I'll just talk for a little bit longer while I wait for them to come through. But please do ask any questions, ask away, and I'm happy to answer anything around this. And if you're watching this on replay, I was going to say, please do ask questions as well, because I will be coming back to respond to anything that does come up. So while I'm just waiting for those questions to come through, if there are any, the thing that I guess I wanted to come back to and just summarize really what I had to say is, so in communicating your value, it's important to value yourself first. That come back to that. Remember that this is about seeing your value, and when you see your value, you can communicate it authentically. You can do that by looking at your skills and your capabilities, and looking at and asking other people about what they have to say about you as well, and using that to get ideas. But once you have an understanding of that value, it's then about translating it to other people and helping the other people see how that adds benefits to them, see how it adds value to them and to the business that you're working in. And so that's the shift that needs to happen, is how do you get from your value to communicating it and translating it for them. And I'd start by working with a couple of people, picking some key people within the organization that you can start to understand what value they're looking for, and starting to help them notice what it is. And I would definitely start with some advocates before you go on. So some people who are friendly, some people who maybe a mentor, or maybe find someone who can help you with this if this is something that you struggle with, and then kind of grow out from there. And by doing it a little bit at a time, just pushing your comfort zone a little bit at a time and seeing how it is, that's a great way to stop yourself from going too over the top. So I hope this has been useful. I haven't seen any more comments come through yet, but if you do have anything further, then please do add it below. So Tony says it's given us some stuff to think about. Tony, as you know, please feel free to ask the questions. I'm happy to answer, and anyone else that's watching too. And I hope you have a fantastic evening. I'm off to have my tea, and I will see you soon.